It is a couple of minutes before 10 o'clock, and we are tracking the tropics on a Tuesday morning from Central Florida. I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, on WJCL 22, Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
So, Jeremy, we've got a tropical storm, finally the next named system, and it is now making its way toward the Gulf Coast. Shall we chat about it?
Yeah, finally, something to talk about here. Lengthy lull in the tropics ended when Francine was named, and this is poised to be a hurricane. Potentially later on today, yesterday, it had a little bit of dry air it was battling. And if you look at the IR, which is a measure of cloud tops, so those brighter kind of red, purples that start to show up, those are the higher cloud tops thunderstorms. So there's a big area of convection that is northeast of the main area of low pressure, and then you see that rotation there to the southeast of Brownsville. That is the center of circulation. That's what we'll watch start to probably intensify pretty quickly today. Don't know about rapid intensification, but this will
Yeah.
get its act together fast.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And as a matter of fact, you can cut through and really see it on the radar data. So we're pulling radar data out of Mexico and out of Texas, and we've got a really good sampling. And just look as we zoom in, there's the center of circulation. The radar presentation is looking significantly better than it was just 12 hours ago. And while the hurricane hunters are investigating this storm system, if we see nothing else, just the radar data alone tells us everything we need. Now, here's a look at the latest data from the hurricane hunters as they feed on through. They found a minimum central pressure of 991 millibars. They found maximum winds of 67. So 991 millibars, okay? The official 8 a.m. numbers had 990 millibars. So to that point, Jeremy, the storm hasn't necessarily begun its intensification yet, but again, I think that it's putting its core together. It's rebuilding that core as some dry air snuck in overnight. And through the day today, I suspect that we'll get some of that strengthening to hurricane status.
Yeah, and it's also forecast to move just a little bit more to the kind of north northeast as we go through today. And the water out there I saw was a little bit warmer. The environment should be a little bit better, so we should see Francine start to strengthen here a little quicker later on today. Right now, as you mentioned, the radar interpretation looks pretty good. We're not seeing a big drop in the pressure at the moment. That may start to come later on today. And I understand we still have another probably like 24 hours or more before landfall. I'm just glad that this doesn't have like a couple days that it's going to be out
Yeah.
over the water to get its act together. So this should be another 24 to more likely 30 hours or so over water
Yep.
and then bumping into land.
Right. And because of that, we are getting closer and closer to landfall, which means that tropical advisories are posted. Here's a look at the latest stats. So, coastal Texas under tropical storm watches, meaning that tropical storm conditions are possible. But right on the Texas and Louisiana border, you see that color turn to blue. That means there's a tropical storm warning in effect. And then that blue shade goes all the way over to New Orleans. Tropical storm warnings mean that tropical storm conditions are expected within the next 36 hours' time. The areas shaded in red there, those are hurricane warnings, Jeremy, which means that hurricane conditions are expected within the next 36 hours' time. So Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, back over to Grand Isle, these are all areas that should expect hurricane conditions over the next couple of days.
And when we take a look at the track of this and the cone itself, obviously a lot of people focus on the center line or sort of where the center is going to track. A lot of models have this somewhere near Marsh Island, Vermilion Bay, maybe a little bit east of there. So not notice how the cone has narrowed down before it was into Texas a bit or near the Texas Louisiana state line. Now it has definitely shifted a little bit more to the east. So what we're looking at is somewhere near Vermilion Bay or potentially even a little bit to the east of there.
Yep, yep. So let's do this then. Let's take a look at some of the model data and just kind of get an idea of what they're saying. And we're going to start with the futurecast model and just kind of get an idea of where it is. All right. And this is our own in-house models that we run, and it gives us an idea of kind of the positioning, the timing, and at least one model's perspective of winds, and very clearly the Futurecast model, Jeremy, has gone on the stronger side, but it's kind of in that Vermilion Bay area for landfall, sometime around 1-2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, as a pretty decent hurricane, borderline Cat 1 slash Cat 2.
Yeah, and I think the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center gets us up to still a Category 2. So maybe it peaks a little bit before land, approaches kind of the coastal waters area, maybe drops back a few miles per hour. But either way, it does look like we'll have another hurricane making landfall along the Gulf Coast sometime tomorrow. And
Yep.
that Futurecast model that you're showing there, that is uh, oh, so you're showing the GFS
I was
right
gonna I was
now?
gonna say, yeah, I led you over to the GFS. Here's the Futurecast model again, though.
Okay, and that's one that historically has done very well with tropical systems. It's been pretty consistent keeping it near Vermilion Bay. This is showing it, I believe, a little bit to the east of that,
Yep.
the center of circulation. So I would say anywhere from Vermilion Bay, where that little island kind of comes out, to where Futurecast, which you're looking at, that's basically most of the higher resolution model data right now, where
Yeah.
it's taking the landfall.
Right, right. So that's one shot, and I was leading it while you were talking, and so this is the American GFS model, and notice it's also on that east side of the bay there as well.
Yeah, so that one and Futurecast lineup, the Futurecast model will have another update with the 12Z run coming up, and then the whole suite of models will update basically between about 11 a.m. and 1:32 p.m. when the European model finishes its
So,
run.
so this is the 6C run of the European. It's definitely a little further west, but I would also note that the European model is a little weaker than the other two models. It seems like the Euro has really gone on the lower end side of the spectrum as far as intensification goes.
And maybe that's the right call at this point
Yeah,
because kind of what we see with our eyes right now. What we don't know is maybe 6, 12, 18 hours down the road
right.
what this will exactly look like. But you can talk about some of the intensities there.
Yeah, well, so yesterday the intensity models were a little more all over the place, and several of them were wanting to call for a Category 2 storm. But just taking a look at the late morning model runs, and a lot of these aren't even getting into Category 2 intensity at all. As a matter of fact, I would say that there's an even half and half where you've got several models bringing it to Category 1 intensity, and you've got several models saying it stays a tropical storm up through landfall. It's kind of interesting. Although the convective burst this morning would at least lead me to believe that it's going to try and make a run for hurricane intensity.
Oh, I definitely think that, and we're only like 10 miles per hour away from that,
Yeah.
and we'll probably start to see the pressures fall a little bit later today. And as we already alluded to, this has more than 24 hours over the warm Gulf waters, and it is starting to look a little bit better there on the radar
Yeah.
interpretation. It
Yeah.
might start to bump a little bit more away from land, but it should stay probably close enough that we'll be able to keep the radar on this until landfall
Right.
now.
Right.
But yeah, you're showing that moving north at 5 miles per hour. That
Yeah.
may pick up a little bit of speed
Yep.
coming up, and then the winds are at 65.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we're close to hurricane intensity for this storm system. Unfortunately, for our friends in Louisiana, it's going to be a system that they're going to have to monitor. But as the hurricane hunters continue to investigate, and I just wanted to check this to see because I know that they're about to make another pass. We'll see what they drop on a vortex message. But all of this during what is the peak of hurricane season. Today is the day. Today, 7 years ago, Jeremy, we were tracking a storm together, as a matter of fact.
7 years. So yeah, we were both tracking. Was it Irma?
It
Is that
was
what you're
Irma.
referencing?
Yeah, yeah, it was
Okay,
Irma.
yeah. And then yeah, so you were in Florida. I was in Savannah. We were both tracking that. We both saw impacts from that storm. We had a lot of coastal flooding here with storm surge. There was obviously some wind, but that one will always be remembered in my area for storm surge. And then in your area, you were a little bit closer to the track of
Right.
it.
Yeah, yeah. We had all kinds of impacts from Irma. It's just crazy to think that it's that long ago. But yeah, so today's the statistical peak of hurricane season. And while we are talking, of course, about Francine, it's important to take a look and just kind of get an idea of the rest of the tropics because for right now, in addition to Francine, there are two other areas that we are monitoring out in the open Atlantic on the right hand side there. The one area Highlighted in orange with a medium 40% likelihood of developing over the next 7 days' time, that's Invest 91. And then in red with a high 70% likelihood of developing over the next 7 days' time is what will be Invest 92.
And that 40% area, at one point, I believe that was up to 60. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah.
So that percent has come down a little bit. If that's going to develop, probably going to have to be here pretty soon. And then we'll monitor that area shaded in red for development within the next 7 days. 70% chance of that. But really, at least right now, we're pretty focused on the Gulf Coast.
Correct. And so to that point, Terry is asking, so New Orleans will be out of the heavy stuff, and I would answer that with nah. There's nothing there set in stone yet. I mean, if you take a
Right.
look, um,
Yeah.
New Orleans is under a tropical storm warning, and I would say that they've edged that hurricane warning closer to New Orleans. It's just going to be a matter of where does the center of circulation actually go. So the next 24 hours time, intensification will play in big, and then of course any jog left or right.
Yeah, and I mean, really, you take a look at this map here. Whether you're talking about tropical storm force wind at 70 miles per hour or say 75 as
Right.
an example,
Right.
I mean, that's not a big difference.
Yeah.
So whether it's a strong tropical storm or it is a hurricane, New Orleans, they will be feeling some impacts from this. And I was getting questions about this. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Obviously, these things can get impacts well away from the
Oh yeah.
center. If you have the convective outlooks, or
Yes.
we'll pop those up in a moment, eventually by probably Thursday or so, we may see some thunderstorms sneak to the east of this as the center goes well inland,
Yeah.
might drag like a cold front or a trough
Right.
through that could start to produce some thunderstorms.
Yeah.
And with tropical systems, you always think, well, maybe these storms could rotate a little bit. Uh, and you can talk about the severe weather
Yeah.
risk if you want. Initially, it's just pretty close to where landfall
Right,
occurs.
right. So this is the risk for severe weather looking to tomorrow, and you clearly can see that there's a slight risk, a level 2 out of 5 risk for strong to severe storms from central Louisiana all the way across through Pensacola and right up to about Apalachicola there. Okay, again, well removed from any center of circulation. You're talking about those brief spin up tornadoes, the damaging wind gusts, things like that. So there's a clear example of where tropical systems are not just dots or lines on a map, they are widespread. So that's tomorrow. So that's Wednesday. We look at the outlook for Thursday, and I think yeah, it says Friday. I need to change this banner. I just forgot to do it. Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna make the sausage here. But yeah, there's your Friday outlook. Thursday. Oh my God. Thursday, I'm typing it. There we go. Thursday outlook, and you can see it goes from basically Mobile Bay all the way up to the Tennessee border. And so, Jeremy, like you said, these are broad-reaching storms that have impacts well away from that center of circulation.
And then another thing, another impact we often see that I'm sure you will in the Gulf Coast area, maybe you're the west coast of Florida, increased chance of rip currents.
Yeah,
When we had, I believe it was Ernesto pass by well off our coast, we had in our area there was a high rip current risk, and we actually had two fatalities at our beaches due to people trying to swim, and they couldn't. They got caught in a rip current. So those are things that a lot of people don't think about. They might be like, well, the sun's out here, but there are sort of those, they're tied to the tropical system, but more like indirect impacts.
yeah.
So these can be wide ranging. So even though you're west coast of Florida, you won't have a direct impact. Maybe your tides are a little bit higher, and also you could have potentially some rip currents.
Well, and even before this formed, what's so interesting is we in Florida got into this super wet weather pattern. And if you look, even with the center of circulation off the coast of Mexico, just follow the line here. I'll circle it, right? If you follow, there's this like moisture plume. And all day I've been calling it just like a sloppy blow off of moisture, but all of that is blowing off our direction. We've had 60, 70% chances of rain the last couple of days. And even before Francine formed, when it was that invest before, whatever it was, that wave, it's just like all of this moisture's been moving through. So we are continuing to add and continuing to add in the rainfall department. And it's not going to be until Francine finally lifts to the north that we're able to at least change back to a normal pattern here in Central Florida.
Yeah, it's been very wet here too. I mean, maybe some days we haven't had the higher end rain totals, but we've had a lot of clouds, a lot of showers. Today's probably our first dry day since sometime the middle part of last week. We may get 1 or 2 dry days, and then as Francine goes north into like the mid South area, it's going to pull all this tropical moisture you just referenced over Florida, parts of the Gulf, Northeast Gulf Coast, the Southeast. So we're going to get into another rainy part of the pattern. So what you're looking at there, this is our hotspot all the way from March the 1st, and it
Yeah.
looks like this will probably be somewhere on that western fringe of this hotspot. And we called for tropical development September 3rd to 10th in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. And here we are. So this would be three out of it. We'll just say this is going to make a landfall. And if it's right around our hotspot area, that's 3 out of 4 so far this
Yeah.
season. So that's 75% at this point.
Yep, and I just put this graphic up and I wanted to discuss it because it does fit our pattern. And while we're never going to pretend to be perfect, right? I think that we do the best we can. I think we do a pretty darn good job. So September 3rd through the 10th was the return part of this pattern. We are watching that happen. And to that point, we've got two other parts of the pattern that we'll need to watch looking forward. And I did just want to kind of go over those as well, Jeremy, because
Okay.
the next part of the pattern is the Debbie part of the pattern. We called it kind of the Gulf to Carolinas low, which is going to recycle again around the 20th through the 28th. And the overarching weather pattern seems to be supportive for this kind of a passage.
Yeah, and some of the longer range models, they obviously, when they're this far out, they flip flop around, but they've
Yeah.
been putting a low either in the Gulf or off the southeast coast. They
Yeah.
kind of vary in how they look, and then maybe one out of every 3 runs that some of these super long range models have, then they don't have anything. But that's definitely a time frame to watch. That has been a very reliable part of the cycling weather pattern. We saw an area of interest highlighted by the National Hurricane Center that June 20th to 26th. We had Hurricane Debbie, tropical storm, as it reached my area, but we had some incredible flooding over parts of southeast Georgia and the low
Yeah.
country with that. That made 2 landfalls, and both were within that August 5th to 12th time frame. We
Yep.
had one Big Bend area and then another one in South Carolina. So I think so far, maybe the amount of storms this season hasn't been maybe quite what we were thinking at this point. We can't judge the season yet;
Right.
it's not over. We always
Right.
say that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the systems that we had highlighted, I think overall that has done well, and we'll see what's in store for the rest of the season. I don't know if we're going to all of a sudden flip a switch, though, like some
Yeah.
people have still said, and have like maybe 4 or 5 storms rolling around the Atlantic basin at once.
Yeah.
We're definitely in a little more active part of the pattern right now. So if we see Francine and then maybe Gordon or
Yep.
one other storm
Yep.
form, that's definitely kind of expected.
So we've got that Debbie part of the pattern that's coming up that we were just discussing. There's one last part of the repeating pattern that we've been discussing for a while. We've been calling it the Gulf to Florida low. It's a very complex part of the weather pattern, but
Yes.
we're watching. Actually, that one's already
Well,
done and
I
over
think,
with.
I mean, we've talked about it. I think I just verbally mentioned
Yeah,
it in my write up that it would come in like the first 5 to 10 days of October,
October.
somewhere in
Right.
there. It kind of
Right.
overlaps with the new pattern that
Yep.
starts to set up. So that's another area we would watch. And as you mentioned, it is complex. I mean,
Yeah.
we could go back on maps and show, but there's like 2 or 3 lows with it.
Yep.
Um, that is definitely a part that we'll watch going into October. So
Yeah.
October can definitely be a very busy month, and then November that tends to be a bit of a wild card. You sometimes get some hybrid
Yeah.
systems. You might get something down in the Caribbean.
Yep. 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 All right. Good old hurricane season. Questions, comments, concerns. Scott's asking, can the two invest systems become one large storm? No. So there's this thing called the Fujiwara effect, where essentially this, if two systems kind of orbit each other, you would end up where the stronger one would start absorbing the weaker one. So you're not going to get. It's not like what was that? Was that movie The Perfect Storm, or was that the day after? It was the day after tomorrow. They were like, it's becoming a mega hurricane. No, it's not. That's not a real thing. So no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we don't need to see any of that.
No. So, any other questions? Deborah's asking, you have any idea for mid-October? Jeremy, I feel like that's our kryptonite, unfortunately.
It is, and but we walk everyone through that. The new pattern becomes established, and that's what we watch closely. Once we get to like, basically, we kind of say October 10th if we had to put a day on it, somewhere once we get into that second week.
Yeah.
And I know, Eric, you're going to love this. I
Uh-oh.
went out and bought my calendar so I can handwrite all my notes on there,
Can't wait.
and then show you that. So yeah, I'll start my new hurricane sort of thoughts and tracking for the lead up of our next hurricane season forecast on March 1st,
And
2025, which is it sneaks up on you once you get through this hurricane season. Then
yeah.
you basically have you have December and January, and by February we're already putting our thoughts together.
I feel like by mid, I mean, how many years have we been doing this together? I feel like by mid-February, we're almost done with the hurricane forecast, you know?
I think I was looking that I had the. I mean, obviously we didn't publish it or have
Right.
it out there, but the write up portion I started on February 19th last year
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
this year, but
Yeah.
in winter.
I feel like mid-February, it's getting going for sure. Yeah, good time, good times. But that also means like we are watching the quieter months is when we're really watching and really analyzing. And while you've got your paper, I'm doing just as much, but I'm on a more digital platform. And what's going to happen, Jeremy, is the next generation after you and I, they're going to make fun of us because you're going to do paper. Grandpa Nelson's going to do paper, or great grandpa Nelson. You're gonna have Grandpa Burris. I'm gonna be on my iPhone, and you're gonna have some kid who's like using Minority Report hand signals doing it. You know, the future is here, right? All right.
But as long as
Yeah,
it leads to success in the end, that's however you get there. It does. However, anyone
yeah.
decides to forecast, it's what the end results are.
If situational awareness, and I think that's all we're trying to do. We're not going to sit here and tell you that this is going to happen this second, but we're trying to give you situational awareness. You can plan vacations, etc. So, all right. So we've got Francine, Jeremy. Let's real quick go over some of the numbers for the season. We've got now, as of today, 6 named storms. The average through today is 8.1. So we're at least adding one to that, but still behind average and well behind where we were last year with 14 named storms through today.
And you're taking a look there at what
Named
do we
storm
got here?
days. Yeah, named storm
Name storm
days. Yep.
days.
Yep.
Okay.
So
And
25.5.
yeah, we're running below average, but I mean when you compare it to last year, we are way below
Yeah.
average. And Francine may only add a handful of days to that total. So
Yep.
I think what we'll start to watch closer is if we start to get a few more named storms, will ACE kind of keep up with the 30-year average? Maybe we jump above it a little bit, but this is a number we'll watch the accumulated cyclonic energy, and we're pretty much right at average right now. Last year we were above it. It only takes one like stronger hurricane
Yeah.
though that lasts for a little while, and you can see this number jump very fast.
Very like we saw with Beryl months ago.
Hmm.
So there you go. Do you have anything else to add, sir?
No, I don't think so. We'll be keeping an eye on the open waters of the Atlantic. Maybe we get another named storm there, and then by the time we talk next week, we'll probably have a much better idea on maybe what we call sort of now that Debbie part of the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. The Debbie part of the pattern toward the end of September, right about the time I've got the cruise.
All right.
That'll be fun. Please don't impact my cruise, please. Although I'm the idiot that booked a cruise at the peak of hurricane season. So what are you going to do?
Hey, there's good deals to be had during hurricane season, right?
That's it. That's it. All right. Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be watching Francine and certainly posting updates on both of our social channels. And for Savannah and the Low Country, WJCL and Jeremy and Central Florida, myself and the West team. From Central Florida, I'm meteorologist Eric Burris.
And from Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22, Chief Meteorologist